Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween is the sequel to the surprisingly not terrible first film that I was terrified to see. I was so afraid to see that movie because the Goosebumps books, as I said in that review, were the books that got me interested in writing when I was a little kid. And reading them really got me interested in telling stories. And I've always felt indebted to R.L. Stine for inspiring me to use my imagination when I was in elementary school. And that first film was actually kind of okay, and I really kind of enjoyed it. And I've watched it since then and still enjoy it. I think it's a really good family Halloween film. So the sequel stars two young kids who weren't in the first, who are trying to start a junk business, and they get an anonymous call to go to this old house and clean up all the junk out of it. This ends up being the old house of R.L. Stine, and they find in it Slappy the Dummy, who starts to wreak havoc on their little town. This film is not as good as the first one, unfortunately. It has a smaller budget. According to Box Office Mojo, the budget for this film is about $35 million, whereas the budget for the original was over $50 million. A lot of the original cast could not return due to other projects that were already in development that would conflict with this, and it seems like Sony Animation Studios decided to just make a completely different movie and rush it and get it out in theaters and have a smaller budget because having a return on their investment would be nice, and Goosebumps is a big property. And so I'm not against a whole new cast. I mean, look at the Goosebumps books themselves. They're filled with different characters. It just feels like Sony really wanted to get a sequel out, so they rushed a lot of elements, making the end product feel very disposable. It's not terrible by any means. I mean, there's no part of the film where I was offended watching it or hurt. I didn't feel like my childhood was being trampled on or anything. It's just an okay movie. The young actors in the film do mostly fine. Their neighbor, Ken Jeong, he's just there to tell jokes every once in a while, and he sort of plays a version of himself that we've seen in many films where he's like always popping up in a movie as like this comedic side character. It's like his thing. He's always a supporting character in a movie who tells jokes really quick, and then you never see him again. And he's doing that again. That's like all I ever see him do in movies. And it didn't really feel like it had a place in the movie, unfortunately. The plot of the first film, the idea of R.L. Stine's books opening and all of these creatures and monsters and terrible things come out and wreak havoc on this town, that's such a great idea. The plot this time around, once you uncover what's actually happening with Slappy and what he wants to do, it's kind of laughably stupid, and it's certainly not very scary, which is unfortunate. It's just kind of weird and a little awkward, and it's just more embarrassing than scary. But there is a nice excuse to have a bunch of creatures roaming around again, doing things again. But the CGI is unfortunately kind of subpar. More subpar than you would expect for a movie that costs over $30 million. It's nowhere near as good as the CGI in the first film, and even that film's CG, it wasn't like mind-blowing or anything. It was just competent. This time around, it's really not that good, and some of it looks almost TV production quality, which I find very strange because Sony Animation Studios, this isn't like, some nobodies. These guys have some serious money at their disposal, and again, it just feels very rushed. But what was most disheartening to me while watching the film, and again, I must reiterate, this is not a terrible film. It's just fine. It's okay. But I think I went in with higher expectations than most people. The direction in the film is so listless. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just there. There's very little energy. It just feels like there wasn't a lot of passion for this material. Which, again, the material is not that great. But you can take subpar material and enhance it with some really energetic direction and some fun pacing and movement with the camera, and it's just not there. And I feel like a mistake that some studios and writers and filmmakers make is assuming that because they're making a film aimed at children, that children aren't going to care that much. And that might unfortunately be true. But I do remember being a kid being blown away by seeing something magical. I mean, I went to the theater and I saw movies like Jingle All the Way. I remember seeing that film, but I don't remember really anything about it. But I remember sitting in the theater watching Lion King. I remember films like Toy Story and how much they blew me away. And it just bugs me when I see a children's film that just feels like it's just released. Like, here you go, we did it, we finished it on time, and we made it for you. But most families are going to walk out of this theater having a good time. This isn't the type of film where you leave thinking, why did I waste my money watching that? There's one last choice in the film I want to talk about that bugged me, And it's this early subplot involving the older teenage daughter and a boy she likes at school. She goes to a club and she sees something that makes her sad and she runs away and she's crying. And I'm like, when I think of Goosebumps, I definitely don't think of teenagers at clubs and I don't think of romance drama, but it's in the film for some reason. And it's kind of pointless. I mean, R.L. Stine had Goosebumps, and that was for kids, but he also wrote Fear Street. That was for teenagers. There are scenes in this film that feel like the worst Fear Street books, where it's just like teen romance stuff. And that was surprising and kind of out of place for me. Towards the third act, it gets a bit better because some stuff happens that I didn't know was going to happen that helps the proceedings quite a bit. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but some stuff occurs and you're like, okay, all right, this is more like what I wanted. I just wish that there was more of that throughout the whole film, and I wish the director gave more care to this material and tried to make a film that was more than just a studio product. I'll give Goosebumps 2 a C+. You may have been expecting a lower grade, but like I said, it is watchable. It's fine. Like, it's totally fine. It's just there's certain negatives about the film that I really wanted to talk about. And I just kept seeing all these ways the film could have been better, but most families are going to have a totally okay time with the movie. Guys, look forward to my review of Bad Times at El Royale coming to you very soon, as well as the start of our 6th annual Halloween special. My wife and I are going to have a lot of videos coming to you very soon, some reviews we're doing. I love doing that every year. Thank you so much, guys. If you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.